Shalom, shalom. First off, I would like to give all praises to Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim, Rakah Kadash, and to my elders of GMS who taught me the truth. Shalom to them, and shalom to you brothers that scattered throughout the four corners of the earth, preaching His gospel, preaching His word, risking your lives to do so. Shalom to you brothers. Yeah, I want to, I'm going to read it. Reports indicate that Spirit Airlines is facing an immediate threat of liquidation and could cease all operation as early as this week. The airline has been struggling to emerge from its second bankruptcy filing in less than a year. So, these airlines and different companies and everything, they're coming to a halt, because of this whole thing, this whole war with the Iran and the U.S. and Israel, whatever, and these gas prices spiking up, they can't afford to stay in business. Read a little bit more. It says, why is this happening now? While Spirit had a plan to exit bankruptcy by early summer of 2026, a sudden fuel crisis has jeopardized those efforts. Surging fuel costs, rising jet fuel prices, exacerbated by the ongoing U.S.-Iran conflict and the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, have added hundreds of millions in unexpected. Let me read that again. Surging fuel costs, rising jet fuel prices, exacerbated by the ongoing U.S.-Iran conflict and the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, have added hundreds of millions in unexpected costs. Creditor reconsideration, because these projects exceeded the airline's available cash reserves. Creditors are reportedly reconsidering their support of Spirit's recovery plan. Operational strain, the airline has already been shrinking, rapidly selling dozens of aircraft and exiting service at multiple airports, including Hartford and Minneapolis, to conserve cash. Right, so, and, Spirit Airlines, they Spirit and Frontier is like one of the hood airlines you can travel on. I rode on Spirit. I did like a little round trip, whatever. I didn't have no bad experience. I didn't see no ratchet stuff going on. Nobody fighting anything like that. It's cheap airlines, whatever. It's supposed to be affordable to people. That can't. And that's. I wouldn't say can't afford like the Delta and like the United. What is that? The United Airways or whatever, I forgot what it's called, but those are the more pricier ones, and Spirit and Frontier are the cheaper ones, and I sat in the front. I ain't sitting on economy seats and none of that, or the regular seats. I just sat first class, whatever, you know what I mean. But it was a good, I had a decent experience with it. But just letting you know, a lot of these companies, and this ain't going to be the only airlines probably that's going to go under. If these gas prices keep going up, a lot of these airlines, they're going to be shutting down. A lot of these companies are going to be shutting down. It ain't going to just be Spirit, like I said, Delta, you still got Frontier, you still got Canada Airways, all these other companies, they might have to just go to go into a halt, because the prices are going up and everything, and they're not going to be able to maintain. That's why we ain't supposed to be putting our faith in this world, in this society. This place is about to be destroyed. The scripture talks about how that a man should not desire to go to a city, whatever, and he and shall not be able to. Roughly paraphrasing, why? Because of the whole the war and everything, and Jacob, Jacob's trouble, and martial law. The military, they're in the streets, the tanks out in the streets, whatever, they're patrolling, you can't go here, you can't go there, you need authorization, you need paperwork, you need some type of, credentials, whatever, to go, whatever you're trying to go, you know what I mean? Ain't nobody gonna be going anywhere, especially the common folk, the regular folk here, the regular civilians, they're not going anywhere, they're not gonna be able to go anywhere. Try to leave America because, shit is getting crazy, whatever, people, all hell is breaking loose and people getting killed and raided and robbed and all kind of shit. People gonna be trying to escape. They ain't gonna be able to escape. They're gonna have to endure that judgment. Especially if they wasn't serving the Lord. if they wasn't out there, prophesying in His name and and having faith in this word, So, it's gonna get this shit is just it's gonna get worse. It's just gonna get worse. It's just one airlines company, So this should just it's gonna trickle down after a while. This is just the start of it. And gas prices, well, at least on the East Coast, whatever over here, it's still at $4 some change. It hasn't gone up, drastically. Whatever, it's still kind of staying in the same. Whatever, it's still in the same. But $4.19, I think that's the highest I've seen, like the Exxon gas stations, whatever. So it ain't too crazy. But if it start hitting like the fives and the sixes, that's when it's gonna, that's when the shit gonna start getting drastic out here, and higher, So, let me get a scripture. I'm gonna close out. I'm just a quick video. The grinding shall grinding shall cease. In Ecclesiasticus 12:3. In the day when the keepers of the house shall tremble, and the strong men shall bow themselves, and the grinders cease because they are few, and those that look out of the windows be darkened. That's right. These businesses and everything are going to close down. They're going to shut down, and no one's going to have jobs out here. People are going to be struggling. People are going to be hurting out here. And ain't nobody's going to be able to work and make money. So what they're going to do, they're going to introduce the MOTB. Here's a solution, Take this, and we tell you what to do. They become your God, Here, take this, whatever. Don't worry about nothing. We're going to give you this amount of money, whatever, digital fucking currency, whatever. You just got to do X, Y, and Z, And that's what's going to happen. A lot of people are just going to give in. Because they ain't gonna have no other way. They, like I said, these people are faithless anyway. Especially our people. They gonna take that shit. And when it says the grinders, when they, they talk about, I'm on my grind, I'm working. You know what I mean? I'm hustling, whatever. Ain't gonna be none of that in that day. Ain't nobody gonna be working. Everything's shutting down. All these businesses are shutting down. So that's it. That's it. That's it. That's it. And that's all I had on that. And Lord willing, this was edifying. This is the brother Ahmad Yala from the Men of Valor Camp. Until next time, Shalom.